what's happening today? Very, very strong container demand. I think it's worth going back a little bit in history. Just a year back at the outbreak of a pandemic, um, countries did lock down, factories closed all over the world, and demand for goods quite logically so dropped. In the peak of the pandemic, especially in the second quarter, this is when we all saw most shipping lines, carriers just removing capacity because the demand was indeed seriously down. We had months at below 10% demand drop compared to the year before, and shipping lines started to adjust capacity. What happened afterwards is that and especially on the back of governmental stimulus, arguably, the consumer spend moved away from services to goods. No more hotels, unfortunately, no more bars, no more travel or holidays, but way more buying manufactured goods. And this happened and continued to grow in the second half of the year as indeed consumers changed their habits. It led to literally a full year 2020 with literally on par volume growth versus 2019, but on the back indeed of a very, very strong third and especially fourth quarter. That growth has continued, and this is what we're experiencing today in the first quarter. And the first quarter 2021 has recorded 11% growth in volume of containers moving. A lot of that growth is actually led by US imports. The chart is telling you here a bit of a graph on how different ports in the world have performed. I put them into perspective with, for example, Los Angeles, Long Beach, to an extent also New York and Houston to illustrate the US demand. 34% growth for the US imports in the first quarter. 70% of that growth actually coming from Asian volumes, and effectively the Trans-Pacific being the lead trade for US imports. When you see the performance of Los Angeles or Long Beach in the recent months, March and April, which are between 40 to up to 100% volume growth compared to the month before, it also is a bit of an evidence, bearing in mind that the majority is coming from Asia, an evidence that indeed consumer habits have moved to goods, especially here manufactured or manufactured in Asia, and this is what has boosted the demand on the Trans-Pacific. 11% volume growth in the first quarter, 34% just for the US. But at the same time, global capacity made available by shipping lines to carry this or to cope with this demand has been much less. Last year, it's estimated that total available capacity grew about 3%. In the first quarter this year, it is 4%. This is quite less compared to the current demand. The reality is that also the shipping lines have really focused on deploying the capacity on the Trans-Pacific, as I explained just before, which is where the largest demand came from. And as you see on the chart here, indeed, we are showing a strong Trans-Pacific capacity growth from 2020, but also from 2019. But as the whole bulk of that capacity was deployed on the Asian lanes, it meant obviously much less space available for example, here, Europe, Asia, or transatlantic. And even if these trades did see a capacity increase compared to June 2020, it's actually less obvious versus June 2019 before the pandemic hit. That is also something that obviously is a bit of a root of a situation that we are experiencing today. Unbalanced supply and demand evolution, a very strong focus on one specific trade, right, the Trans-Pacific, and this is leading to indeed poor schedule integrity from shipping lines. It is leading also to straining the networks. Not everything is obviously attributable to shipping lines, far from it. But one of the things that we experience today, again, with the boost of the demand for North America, is that the ports just cannot cope. The ports cannot cope because the surge of cargo is very sudden, because also the ports are working with adjusted productivity and working practices linked to COVID restrictions. And what we experienced over the last year, and even stronger this first quarter, is delays for ships not on time, mounting to literally a week. So today, unfortunately, and that's the record for the first quarter, you have basically 60 or 65% of all the ships in the world which are late, and those being late are on average 6.5 days behind schedule in the first quarter. That's phenomenal. It's unheard of. A week behind means obviously you are missing a ship for the following week departure, right? Another way to put it is that these delays, and this is an estimate that has been put together and presented by Sea Intelligence, consultant of the shipping world out there. Sea Intelligence has reported that in February, up to 12% of the world capacity was effectively absorbed by the delays in the different ports. This slowed down a little bit to 8% in April. It's actually going up again in May and June. Some more rippling effects of the situation inherited from the Suez Canal blockage, and today of the Yantian port situation, as everybody heard about, I'm sure. 12% capacity absorbed by the delays. This is basically the equivalent of the capacity which the carriers had pulled out from the sea in June 2019 when demand had totally collapsed. At the time, we referred to the idle fleet, so literally container vessels put at anchor because they were not needed. All these ships have been redeployed on the water because of a strong demand today, but they are basically made unavailable by the delays at the port.